Hello, I'm Phil Poinelli, firm principal, architect, and educational planner with SMMA in Cambridge, Massachusetts. With me is Alex Pitkin. In December 2019 and January 2020, the publication Education Week was running a series of articles around the changes in education across the previous decade. That was about the same time frame for the planning of the East Joint Conference. There's a direct connection between changing education and pedagogy and the architecture of learning environments that responds to those changes. Little did we know that within just a few months, the pandemic would hit and profoundly change the world and certainly the pedagogy of education. Some of the things, such as one-to-one technology, high-speed access, and hybrid learning that had been accomplished in some communities, in progress in others, and barely dreamed about in many, were thrust upon everyone in an instant. And per the socioeconomics of our world, communities thrived, struggled, and many failed. The rich stayed rich, and the poor got poorer educationally. So back to the theme of this discussion. As curriculum and pedagogy changes, there's no guidebook for how educational environments respond to those changes. But that's an inherent charge to what we do and who we are. I've said for years that our role as planners and designers is that we need to read between the lines of the research and pedagogy and develop environments that not only respond, but enhance the educational intent. I get to see designs of many schools, locally in Massachusetts, nationally, and some internationally. I see many incredible projects that not only enhance educational pedagogy, but are good, even great architecture that provide for the joy of learning. I also see far too many school designs that are stuck in the 1980s and 90s. A4LE is all about reinforcing the good and great and teaching others how to achieve that. So here we are, looking back on the decade 2010 to 2020 and projecting out years into the future. Across that decade, what was a whisper? What was clearly articulated? What can be anticipated for the future? Based on our learning curve of the recent past, trust me, this list has changed over the past 16 months and will continue to change. So there are three articles that sparked this discussion, and they're noted here. I hope you look them up on the Education Week website. Here are 4 learning objectives for this session. I'm not going to read them, but they focus on changing educational pedagogies, trends in education, and how we as planners and designers need to understand the changes, communicate with key stakeholders, and develop school projects that are not only meeting the current needs, but have the flexibility to meet the needs of changing education decades into the future. And most of all, understand and reflect why design matters. Alex and I have grouped the issues into early phases of what we do: programming, planning, and processing, and the phases of design and how these issues manifest themselves in the built environment. We're going to talk about universal pre-K, UDL, reducing special education out of district placement, embracing diversity, technology, intergenerational learning, SIFE and high EL populations, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, JEDI. We will then get into the issues impacting the design of buildings and sites. Embracing diversity, again, social emotional learning, neighborhood planning within the schools, teacher collaboration, sustainability, resilience, multi-use, portfolio evaluation, school safety and security, interdisciplinary, technology, localized support, porous boundaries, and the larger community engagement, and many more. By the way, as you can see, some of these issues are in both categories of planning and design. Universal pre-K. Most all districts have some sort of pre-K program. In Massachusetts, all communities are required to have a program for special needs students at age 2.9. This is done with gen ed peers. This serves somewhere between 15 and 25% of pre-K population. But what about the rest of the population? Pre-K serves a very important role in overall child development. Less likely to be arrested, more likely to graduate from high school, higher college education attendance, and less likely to struggle with substance abuse as adults. Though these sound like they belong to more marginalized communities, that's not necessarily the case. Improved self-esteem and other social emotional byproducts are well documented. New York City has had universal pre-K programs that serve currently roughly 70,000 students. All elementary projects in the planning should explore the inclusion of pre-K. And universal pre-K is now on the national agenda. All master plans should include universal pre-K in the planning. We all understand universal design, complete and ubiquitous access to buildings. UDL takes this exponentially further. Ubiquitous access to education, regardless of your learning style, intellectual or social limitations. This needs to be a mindset that is reflected in the school building. This will come up again in the next segment. Schooling children in their community rather than sending them to collaboratives out of district has many advantages. Less time on specialty buses, alongside their gen ed peers and siblings, close to home, and significantly saving costs. So what's needed? Specialty environments, life skills programs, integration when possible to gen ed programs, connections to the communities, and programs that we're seeing in schools from K to grade 12 include autism, language-based programs, social emotional programs, cognitive delay, and medically fragile students. And often medically fragile students may have one or more of the conditions above as well. Embrace diversity in master planning. Many of us are prime consultants in the master planning of school districts. As such, we are uniquely influential in the future of where schools are located, which will be renovated or built new, the schedules and the scope and nature of the schools of the future. We can bring the mindset of diversity to the planning process. We can recommend and facilitate community engagement, and let's use the power to take our clients beyond what they were anticipating when they engage us. Equity across neighborhoods and communities within a district, developing consistent rubric criteria for analysis, engaging the community throughout the district. We really have to get to them. They're not going to come to us. And really propose district-wide changes. Technology access. One of the few positive things that resulted from the COVID pandemic was to thrust school districts from dreaming about being one-to-one to actually being one-to-one. What it did not do universally was to provide high-speed internet access to all. Poor communities, rural communities, indigenous, and others often got Chromebooks, but without or with unreliable access. This may be one of the biggest contributors to the opportunity gap. Intergenerational learning. This is not new. There are one-offs in many communities. We've incorporated one of each of these programs listed in selected schools, mostly high schools, but with significant interest in schools as center of community, locally, nationally, and internationally, you'll be seeing more interest from clients. I think our biggest challenges will be changing the mindsets of voters to understand that this is really and economical and worthwhile from a social and educational standpoint. Council on Aging and Senior Centers, teen centers, daycare, community colleges, community health clinics, and more. SIFE and high EL populations. Students with interrupted formal education and English learners. Many think this is an urban issue, but to the contrary, we see the need for additional spaces in most all communities, rich and poor, urban and suburban. Pull out, pull over, push in. Cultural adaptations within buildings, such as how to accommodate students observing Ramadan. We're currently designing a school with over 50% EL students, with full classrooms dedicated to EL at each grade level. Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, or JEDI as A4LE has characterized it. Besides COVID, JEDI awareness and its movement may have been the most profound impactor in the decade to our society and to schools. How these impacts will manifest in the built environment will be ongoing and in some communities, even hotly debated. Florida's already banned critical race theory. Okay, it's not a loud part of the past decade, but after 2020, part of every company, district, authority, and organization is going to include in its strategic plan JEDI moving forward.
Building and site design implications. We believe there are a number of careful building concepts and components that have been gaining momentum over the last decade, and that should serve educational planning and environments well for the next couple of decades.
Social emotional learning has emerged as an umbrella term for a number of concepts, including non-cognitive development, character education, 21st century skills, and trauma-informed learning, among others. Most often, soft skills such as grit, empathy, growth mindset, and social skills are associated with it. Since educators have difficulty defining SEL, designing for it might seem difficult. But in fact, it gives a great deal of meaning to what we often refer to as the spaces in between, the connecting tissue that really makes schools work.
The implications for building design are very different for the various age cohorts. We like to build on the metaphors that link elementary school age children to the home and its scale, comfort, and familiarity. Middle schoolers are exploring at a broader neighborhood scale and most often represented by team teaching and its expanded range of adult and student connections and core subject specialists. Whereas at the high school level, we are sampling both broadly and deeply with more independence and hopefully more choice and deeper community involvement. This is most often represented by sports, band, orchestra, chorus, wide offerings of clubs and volunteering, the critical social bonding that happens in our public schools. School design has never been so complex or as interesting. As we celebrate the complexities of our children and their unique learning styles, so too have the spaces within our schools expanded to support society's contract for universal education. Aligning what educators mean when they say flexibility with flexible design is the essence of modern educational space planning, creating an ecosystem of spaces that allow for a variety of experiences aligned to differentiated learning. Going back to our metaphor, not just relying on the generic classroom model, but introducing spaces that are scaled to small children that add interest in visual stimulation, warmth, and comfort, or more informal spaces to take a break from the ubiquitous classroom environment. This is as important for this teacher as it is for these students, and applying more visual energy to places where the culture of a school population comes together. If we want our older students to act and behave like adults, we need to design schools with the same attention as we do of our civic spaces. All schools face fiscal limits in design, and every square foot matters, but this need not impede the implementation of sound educational planning, mostly through the creative allocation of space, and in particular, how traditional corridors are appointed. At roughly 30% of the school's area, corridors are too valuable to waste as repositories for lockers and 5 minutes of transition time. Nooks and pullover spaces, when thoughtfully designed, are a smart use of circulation space. This concept of manifesting spatial variety in a school also applies to vertical connections, and especially those around active project-based learning environments, such as the one shown here. Visual exposure to programs promotes excitement and eventually student exploration and participation, particularly interdisciplinary connections. It's okay to show off a space like the TV studio. This models real-life examples, like the Today Show is exposed to passerbys at Rockefeller Center.
Co-teaching has been around a long time, but often lacks the traction by the unavailability of appropriate teaching spaces. Today, high acoustic quality operable walls provide the choice of individual classrooms or larger co-teaching spaces. Combined with flexible, ergonomic, lightweight furniture, teachers and students have multiple options for differentiated and personalized learning, from large group to small group to individual modalities.
The ubiquity of technology does not require much discussion here, but its constant evolution has made apparent the need to create functional lifelong learners. And of course, COVID has forced our hands to remote learning and work. Now we need to regroup and learn from the last year and a half's experience. I also included this image of an early 20th century school that shows we don't need to throw out every building. Technology can be a catalyst for the types of transformation educators are looking for, even if it's only a temporary bridge to a future facility. Universal design makes all users of a building comfortable by creating equal access. We need creative and thoughtful solutions around gender fluidity, much like the integration of special needs, the ADA, and physically disabled and sustainability practices, which have opened our minds to new pattern languages for our schools. And again, if our mindset is about inclusion and creating a more rich ecosystem for learning, the removal of gender bias will make our society a better place. A number of years ago, we would hear student support staff talk of eating lunch with students in their offices or in out-of-the-way places in the school. I witnessed this with my own children, sometimes joining a special needs student as part of a lunch group. This has prompted a response in our work to transform the large cacophonous cafeteria into a richer environment that supports children who can't function or tolerate the scale or noise that comes with large, densely packed dining facilities. And yet, we still want those students linked visually and connected to the greater student body. Everyone has seen 1,000 learning stairs by now. Their ubiquity is due to the informal and independent space they create, together but apart. These are not staged photographs you're looking at, and you can clearly see the body language making this a different framework for socialization than the cafe tables, and hence why these are so popular in today's designs. One of my favorite examples of a fully realized student commons is North Middlesex Regional High School, a rural high school in Massachusetts. Centered in the building is the formal entrance and the informal back door, taking in both the morning and afternoon daylight. It delivers social variety in 5 different ways. The dining commons is large enough and comfortable to serve students in the community for after-hours events. The learning stair that we already spoke of, but uniquely in this space can serve as stadium seating or as a platform stage, making the common space even more flexible. Individual high top or bar stool seating. These are some of the best seats in the school, overlooking the hallway or the outdoor dining spaces, giving students an option for solo or limited interactions, quick dining, or a study space between classes. Outdoor dining spaces, of which there are 2, the front is a bit more formal, and the back, which is associated with vegetable gardens, where students volunteer and donate to families with food scarcity. Giving students the option to eat outside is an important break in their daily activities. And going back to our original premise and creating a smaller space, a bit out of the hustle and bustle, this space can also be closed off by an operable glass wall and used as an extra large group instruction room throughout the day or evening. And as you can see in the photos, it's a more calm space for any student, not just those with social and emotional needs. We can't talk about the well-being of our students without addressing the needs of the professionals and staff in the building. A student may spend 4 to 6 years in a facility, a teacher 20, 30, or more. It's important to have a professional environment that's comfortable and flexible with controlled visibility. I love this unscripted moment in the right-hand photo of a teacher with a student making a genuine connection. Healthy adult and student interactions form the key to the future of education. Lactation rooms are now mandatory, but these can also be a place of respite and calm for any teacher. We all recognize the importance of getting students outside, but this also applies to the staff. and we look to create spaces that are separate from student play and activity. This dedication garden is a wonderful outdoor room that brings nature into the administrative suite, nurses' rooms, and a behavioral needs classroom, all environments that can get very stressful at times. But its primary intention is a reflective, quiet place for staff to be outside on breaks. Gone should be the days of one teacher and 25 students in a room. Modern teaching is more like coaching, and more is accomplished for students through flexible learning commons and organizational plans that support such. School size should not be an impediment in this organizational planning method. We have had success with as many as 8 classrooms per team and as small as 3 sections. One of the keys to succeeding with this model is rethinking lockers and cubbies. They're often real barriers to breaking the mold of egg crate, factory-style schools. An old concept of the cloakroom solves the problem by keeping wet and dirty outerwear out of the commons and classrooms, while allowing for transparency and openness from the classroom to the commons.
Portfolio evaluation is and likely will continue to take the place of standardized testings for college admissions. Despite the political need for measurable accountability, portfolio evaluation, especially with project-based and problem-based learning, will likely increase in the coming years. Student project storage will be a necessity as this modality increases in popularity. We think of artificial intelligence as some futuristic thing that many of us don't really understand. In fact, it's here. Educators are discussing AI in Education Week almost weekly. In a recent article, spending on artificial intelligence in education will rise from $600 million to over $6 billion over the next 4 years, according to projections from an educational think tank. Students and teachers need to understand the fundamentals of AI and its use in personalized instruction. I can see in the future many students having individual workstations in schools.
The reintegration of the arts and sciences has been back in full swing and is recognized as the future of education, discovery, and the innovation economy. Interdisciplinary learning, however, does not mean a lack of deep core subject knowledge. A comprehensive school combines the traditional college curriculum with the vocational programs so many students today are craving. These programs are usually separated and drive students away from their local social networks. In Massachusetts, many small cities are fortunate to have these co-located on a single campus. However, co-location isn't always enough. Intentional blending and integration is the design challenge. And so again, we see this theme of breaking down isolation and separation. In the 4 comprehensive schools we have designed, we rethought adjacencies and commingled programs, blending college track and certificate track students to the benefit of both. As an example, the biology and chemistry labs are adjacent to the healthcare services program. A future college track nursing or doctor student can get hands-on experience, while the student with a medical assisting certificate can take college track courses and be prepared for future advancement. This is about opening up possibilities and opportunities in the broadest sense possible. Comprehensive schools are STEM and maker programs on steroids. One of my favorite examples is the Fashion Tech program at QHS. You have the design and conceptual creativity component and the hands-on fabrication with tool use and problem solving. But you also have the presentation and communication piece. The building supports this with large window storefront type displays. And by being located near the graphics, broadcasting, and theater programs, passive display becomes active presentation, building confidence and presentation skill sets. I love that these dresses are made from recycled materials. It's yet another layer of interest made by including sustainability. We've already touched a bit on the topic of getting our students and staff outside. If there should be one positive takeaway from COVID, it should be that getting outside should not be a barrier to learning, but just the opposite, a catalyst for improving student outcomes. One district we worked with bought each student a paint bucket. Cheap, easy to carry, or personalized. This made going out an adventure. This is a return to past behavior patterns, and we can accomplish more with ergonomic, lightweight furniture options that are available to us today. Urban schools need to be creative with less options. Rooftops, alleyways, entire neighborhood programs, but sometimes less is more. If we design our schools with a campus planning mentality, these outdoor spaces are easily wended into the fabric of the school's educational program. Rural districts may already have strong bonds to local organizations, such as 4-H programs or community colleges. We are also seeing an interest in all districts to support locally sourced food, to support the local economy, but also as a healthier food choice.
Schools as centers of community is a discussion that's been going on for years, and it's really picking up steam. A4LE recently had a conference on the subject, and following that, I attended a session developed by the University of Melbourne. It's a discussion that's going on worldwide. Earlier, I spoke about schools as intergenerational facilities. This is a senior center incorporated into the Swampscott High School. Yes, these types of facilities add square footage and cost money, but are in fact very cost effective when compared to standalone facilities. But more importantly, there are bonds made between people sharing experiences, mentoring, and providing volunteer opportunities. This human capital is really the place where intergenerational facilities thrive. It takes a village and porous boundaries between schools and communities. In our master plan for the Boston Public Schools, significant focus was given to neighborhoods, how the community uses the school, and how the school may need and want to rely on the community for services, nearby colleges, universities, parks, libraries, and community centers. Sustainability and resilience. LEED and CHIPS have been around a long time, but the social and economic interests in going well beyond those metrics is advancing quickly. Most schools are being designed for net zero ready. COVID has only increased the interest in healthy school environments and embracing of well building standards. The super insulated prescribed by Passive House is a natural extension to all of these advancements. Again, as part of our master planning in Boston Public Schools, the study of resilience identified 5 schools that are anticipated to be underwater by the year 2050. These subjects are particularly interesting to many school children at many grade levels. The many interrelated subjects for interdisciplinary curricula and project-based learning. The school sites and buildings provide for hundreds of learning opportunities, and the third teacher.
Schools often find themselves at the center of community or neighborhood life. There will be pressure to tear down and build new to ensure all the various concepts Phil has spoken to can be met. However, we should not turn our back on the past. History is a critical component of the social arts, and thoughtfully preserving physical and written stories makes our built environment only richer. Not every building can or should be saved, but salvaging and integrating local history enriches the student experience. Critical race theory and architectural archaeology can serve to tell our truth to our students.
The use of the entire building and site for learning environments. For years, school buildings have been sterile vessels, relying solely on student art and teacher decorating to enliven the spaces. Along the way, we've engaged educators on how education could be infused into the environment, inspirational quotes, math and engineering formulas as examples, and exposing the building itself. School sites can offer students incredible opportunities for hands-on learning and research.
One of my favorite recent examples is the reinstallation of a cross-section from a 200-year-old white oak that recently fell on a project site. By combining environmental graphic storytelling with project-based learning, a timeline is being created in the entrance lobby. Here, students can connect U.S. and world history with local history and the environment through research, and what might typically be a static installation becomes an interactive, ever-evolving element of the school.
Fun and joy have seldom been part of describing a school in the past. Today, teachers are talking about it all the time. This is providing us opportunities to get very creative. This is one of my favorite school tours ever, Trillium Creek Primary School in West Linn, Oregon, by Dulles and Weeks IBI, a fabulous school where kids experience fun and joy in their daily experience. I went down that slide during our tour. Let's have fun and joy researching and engaging others in the planning and design of schools. Alex and I would like to thank you very much for being part of this look back and look forward in planning and design of schools. Thank you.